Today's podcast was extremely good. One of my favorite episodes ever. I had my friend Amr on, and we talked about a bunch of different things. He is building a almost over $100 million project in Beverly Hills. We talk about his multi-million-dollar watch collection and what it means to be a true collector and just everything that goes with it. We also go over what it was like living in the Middle East during bombings and growing up in that type of nature, and just how it shaped him today as an entrepreneur and as someone who's doing some crazy things. So you're going to want to listen to the end of this podcast because we go in depth on a lot of different topics. Also, I've got my mastermind coming up here on September 30th through October 2nd. He's actually going to be at it if you want to meet him in person. It's going to be a really cool 3-day event here in Las Vegas, so you don't want to miss out on that. Link to that down in the description below. Now, let's jump into it. We all know that I love creating passive income through rental properties, but did you know that you can create passive income through owning an e-commerce store? My company, Lunar Ecom, can build and manage a store for you on Amazon or Walmart. We'll handle everything from starting the store, picking the products, and all the day-to-day operations. It's completely passive for you. If you'd like to learn how store owners are making thousands a month in passive income, head over and watch the case study at lunarecom.com. It will explain everything you need to know about the industry and why I'm so excited about it. So to see the case study, head over to lunarecom.com. If you've ever wanted to invest with me on my real estate deals, it's now possible. At Pineda Capital, we're purchasing value-add real estate all across the country. This includes multifamily, commercial, and land development. The best part is, with my network, social media presence, and marketing strategies, we're able to get the very best deals that others don't have access to. You can join in with me on those deals if you're an accredited investor. If you want to learn more, head over to pinedacapital.com to see our current opportunities. Once again, that's pinedacapital.com. Welcome to the Ryan Pineda Show, where our mission is to invest.
I only expect to make money in things that I understand.
Innovate.
It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past.
And inspire. I am much more likely to hit my goal just due to putting it out there.
You're now rocking with the best.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Ryan Pineda Show. Today, I have one of my brand new friends, also one of our students in our Future Flipper coaching program, Amr Samaha.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
If you guys are watching YouTube, you can see that he's got pink hair. I've got blue hair. I don't know what we're doing, dude.
We're free balling, man.
I know, dude. You told me that you are treated more nicely with your pink hair.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. I usually go between gray and pink, and whenever I have gray hair, it seems that people, are very serious with me. And then when I have pink hair, I think people just extend a little bit of courtesy and kindness. Like
they're just like, this guy's a goof.
Yeah,
Like,
he's soft in the head. Who
yeah,
knows?
he's not harmful.
Yep, that definitely disarms people.
Yeah, for sure. And when you said that, I was like, I don't know that I've been treated any different with blue hair. It's just like, what is this guy doing?
I don't know. I definitely realize that it's a thing for me with pink hair. Like, people are extremely kind. They let me cut in the line. They just, I don't know how to describe it.
You just do what you want.
Yeah, basically.
Nice, dude.
It's pretty nice.
I love it. So, on today's episode, I want to jump into your story because you got so many things going on, man. You came here from Kuwait. You also have Egyptian heritage. You're building, $100+ million developments in LA. And also, too, you've got this multi-million-dollar watch collection that I definitely want to talk about. So, man, I don't even know if we're going to have enough time to get into everything, but let's just jump into it, dude. Tell me about your upbringing.
Yeah. So growing up in Kuwait, my parents moved when I was about 3. It was right after the first Gulf War, and my father helped the Kuwaiti people redevelop a lot of their properties there. So there's a lot of heritage in my family where, we come from a long line of engineering and developers. And to that end, growing up in Kuwait, it felt, very nice to kind of feel that American people were always watching your back. I remember very clearly at some point during the second Gulf War, Scud missiles flying overhead. and then Patriot missiles coming out and blowing them out of the sky. And if you can't help but think to yourself, these people are the best nation on earth.
Yeah.
And for that and that alone, I've always had this like undying loyalty to America.
Even when you never had been to America or
Absolutely
anything?
not. No, I didn't go to America till I was probably 17. So kind of a young adult. And till that point in time, growing up as a child, they take you to the fire department, the police station, and then you end up on an aircraft carrier where you're told, these people are protecting you. They're your military. And it was honestly one of the most endearing things to know that there's a nation out there that was watching out for someone else's interest and kind of protecting these people. So yeah, that was definitely a very fortunate thing for the nation that I grew up in, and it made it so that we lived very peacefully and flourished. And beyond that, I went back home to Egypt to kind of get a little bit of that heritage, and I studied architecture there. Helped develop a company that eventually was sold and did extremely well. I moved with my girlfriend at the time to the U.S. after she had kind of been starting to look at some jobs with the United Nations in New York. And during that time, I got introduced to this venture capital world, where I worked for 4 or so years, and then eventually took what I learned in that space and what I already known in architecture and real estate development and kind of combined the both in what we're currently doing in Los Angeles. I think that's kind of the high level cliff notes of what my life's been like.
I mean, there's obviously a lot that goes into what you just said. First thing I want to touch on is, like, man, what was it like growing up in the Middle East during this time with, like, you hear about all the war and like these bombings and these crazy things, like, but you actually lived through it. You saw missiles.
Yeah, dude. It was tough. Having an insane neighbor is not a sweet thing. So Saddam Hussein, the infamous dictator, was the next door neighbor. And, always felt like there's this looming cloud of darkness. And if it weren't for the American military protecting Kuwait, I probably wouldn't be here. I remember very clearly at some point in time, being at the mall and a Scud missile, like I said, being shot out in the second Gulf War. And, you look up at the sky and this is all happening in like split seconds, right? And sirens go off and you're running out trying to get for shelter. And you see a Patriot missile come out, and it had actually misfired a little too slow, and it blew the thing out of the sky. But even in misfiring, we were okay. Now imagine if that hadn't happened, probably we wouldn't be here with you today.
It's crazy.
So to that end, it was definitely a rough time. It wasn't easy, but thankfully, we were on the right side of history, and thankfully I'm here with you today.
Yeah. Well, you were just telling me too, when you came to America, you were just like already the biggest patriot ever, because you're like, dude, these guys
are the best people on earth.
Yeah.
Because, and that honestly goes back to this general ideology where, the American people were siding with what's right. There was, at the end of the day, it wasn't America's place to intervene if it weren't just because they were doing what's right.
Yeah.
They were getting in the middle of something that's ugly and unnecessary for the American people to get involved in. But in them doing so, they helped many nations in the area develop and get that opportunity where, people like me were offered comforts in life and were able to add something to humanity, which is, I hope, what I could do at some point in time.
Yeah. Well, and you see all these people who protest the war and America getting involved in this stuff, and you've heard so many people say, whatever, we should not be dealing with all these other countries' problems and different things. But to see like you as a result of what we did out here in America now, doing great things for America, innovating, developing, and building, it just shows like it's worth it.
I think it's absolutely worth it. I'm obviously no politician. I'm just speaking of my personal experience, and all I could tell you is my personal experience would have probably been extremely different hadn't been for the help of the American people. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
So, to each their own, but I could also understand the other side. If at some point I had served in the Egyptian military, I did not like it. I don't want to get involved in other people's issues. But at the same time, all I do know is my experience, and the American people helped me a lot to live a much better life and, go after it.
Yeah, I love that. So that's crazy that you grew up through all of that stuff. I can't even imagine. But eventually it led you to going back to Egypt, where you got into architecture. How'd that happen?
So if you can't tell by my pink hair, I was always
You're creative.
Yeah, I always had the flair for creativity, I'd say. Like I said, my dad was an engineer himself, and he was in real estate development. So the closest thing that I could do, associated to that, was architecture. It was kind of blending a skill set that I wanted to build on for my family, which is, the real estate development side of things, and then gave me the opportunity to express my creativity. And I found my place in architecture. I studied that for 5 years. I'm an architectural engineer, so licensed both to be an engineer and an architect. And from that point onwards, I kind of wanted to monetize that degree to the best capacity that I can. And I realized that architecture is one of those spaces that's a rite of passage. So you do a lot of work for a lot of years for very little, and that didn't sit very well with me. So
You got to earn your stripes.
basically, and I wanted to fast track that. So I thought, how can I do that? And basically led me to doing business in architecture, right? So I started working on something that's called signage and image, which is basically doing corporate architectural branding, things like Starbucks or, Mercedes-Benz or Porsche have a specific image to their company. Pineda HQ, soon to be, will also have an image to its space, right? And people identify that space by the elements that are in it, even if you don't see that it says, whatever the company name is.
I would know what a McDonald's look like without the logo.
Exactly. And to that end, I started manufacturing corporate image for some of these conglomerates. And we were basically outbidding everyone in the region because of the labor arbitrage between someone that's doing it in Europe and someone that's doing it in South Africa, and then us doing it in Egypt. I was able to really do well on quality control, and at some point we got contracts for a lot of those corporate companies. At some point we had one client that had 252 locations distributed in 1 year, at which point we were poached by one of the larger companies that does this, and they offered us an offer that we couldn't refuse, and that's where I kind of dipped.
Okay, so your company sold out. This is you living in Egypt, still doing this.
Correct. It was 10 years of me living in Egypt. So 5 doing school and then 5 doing business.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when did you move to America?
I'm really bad with dates, but I want to say it was around 2014, 15.
Okay, so you go to New York because your girlfriend at the time
Correct.
wanted to work for the United Nations. And
Yeah, and my wife now.
So
at that point in time, she was moving to work for the United Nations in New York, or at least in preparation to do so. She used to work in The Hague prior to that for the United Nations, and she asked, how about you come? You'll see, New York and meet my family and help me move in. I did, and I got offered an opportunity through her brother to work with him / for him for VC that was just acquiring a new medical technology, and they were looking for smart individuals that understood the space. I definitely did not understand the space, but I knew that I can.
yeah.
So to that end, I was offered the job. I couldn't turn it down, and I did that for the next 4 years. It was probably some of the hardest work that I've ever done, and it was also some of the biggest growth opportunities that I've had in my life, to be honest. Working in New York is a whole different beast, and it gives you a certain drive, and that was definitely something that I could leverage today.
Yeah, so tell me about what you were doing with that company.
So it started off with us acquiring a pharmaceutical that targeted the lumbar spine, which is a lower part of your back, and it would basically try to alleviate disc pain, also known as sciatica. And it was a Korean drug, and basically what we were going to do is put it through its paces with the FDA, and then if it were something that would be approved, then we would, commercialize that drug and then sell it off to a bigger conglomerate, say J&J. So we started working on that initially, and while doing that, we acquired a few other companies and transitioned to work on one of them that had a sooner exit time, and that was a lumbar device. So it's if you hurt your back and you need to have it fused, this was an alternative that would give you that flexibility where you'd still be able to move those segments. And my specific part was basically to lobby on behalf of the company for health insurance providers and explain to them the data that would show that it's better for the client and at the same time better for the bottom line for the insurance provider.
Right.
And we were successful at doing that, and at some point we were able to leverage that acquisition and sell it off to a larger conglomerate that is traded on the public markets.
Wow. So, what's crazy is most people I talk to, including myself, right, when we get into real estate, it's pretty much always the same path of, all right, let's buy a house here, a house there, let's start flipping, maybe we wholesale, we buy some rentals. And then, like in my case, I started doing bigger deals. All right, let's develop my custom home. Let's develop this office building. Let's buy a 300 plus unit apartment. But you did the opposite. You were like, hey, let me, go learn architecture and high level development stuff. Okay, now I'm going to go to New York and work for this VC and go pitch and lobby and do the stuff that like these $1 billion corporations have to do. Cause I've never had to go lobby for one of my real estate projects, but I know that's part of it. Politics plays a huge role in getting development approved.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we're actually doing some minor lobbying in the areas that we're in for larger developments. Lobbying has a bad stigma, generally speaking, but it's actually a good thing. All it means is that you're explaining what is going on with the thing that you're trying to achieve.
Right.
And sometimes people need to understand your perspective, and being able to pitch that perspective is lobbying. At the end of the day, if it's legit, it'll go through. If it's not, you get kicked to the back of the line.
But at least you have the opportunity, whereas you wouldn't.
Correct, to present what you have to present. You're absolutely right. I wouldn't say that I always had this vision of kind of like doing it from the top down, from the top and then going down. But I did identify early on that there are kind of two paths to doing everything, and I really didn't like the path where I was going to get taken advantage of for several years.
Yeah.
And to that end, I kind of chose the path that had a lot more risk, but I could see that it has a lot more rewards. Beyond the point where I studied architecture and then sold that company and started doing all that work for the VC, once I decided to get back into real estate and kind of merge the knowledge that I had gotten with VC and then the knowledge that I had from architecture, I realized that the city that I decided to do this in is very competitive. I decided to do this in LA, and there's a lot of people on the market basically trying to get on the smaller deals. And I could already see that in doing that, I would be in a very tough spot trying to, position myself. So quickly and early on, I realized that if I went after luxury developments, I'd have a lot more leeway. And especially if there were luxury developments that were riddled with issues that only an architect would understand. And I kind of went after that. So I started off by buying a property that was undervalued in the Hollywood Hills area with jetliner views. It was a downhill slope, which is very hard to build and has a lot of regulation around it. And we basically solved it like a jigsaw. It took forever, but it definitely put us on a map, because once we were done with that, we showed the credentials to anyone that wanted to see, what we had to offer by just being able to execute against that one project. And then through doing that, I was able to meet a few individuals through a passion of mine that you kind of mentioned earlier, which is watch collecting. And that opened even more doors and more opportunities to collaborate with people on much bigger projects.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I want to talk in depth about the watch collecting, not because, well, actually, I take that back. Because I am interested in watches and I am going to be buying, some luxury watches. So I want to pick your brain, but also too, because you've explained this to me off camera, just how valuable it is kind of networking in the right circles. And before we do that though, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't have the time to find deals yourself? That's where Fundrise comes in. Fundrise is a crowdfunding platform that has transacted over $5 billion in real estate and has over 150,000 active investors. While many funds, like my own, require accredited investors, Fundrise allows anyone to invest with as little as $500. If you'd like to learn more, check out fundrise.com. Once again, that's fundrise.com. Are you looking to find off-market real estate deals? One of the best tools my team uses is Batch Leads. With Batch Leads, you're able to pull data, manage lists, and send text messages. On top of that, you can get nationwide access to the MLS to get pictures and comps. My team has used Batch Leads to get some of our best deals, so I know it works. If you want to start today, you can get half off your first month by going to batchleads.io and using the promo code Ryan. Once again, that's batchleads.io, promo code Ryan for half off your first month. Now, back to the show. All right, so how'd you get into watch collecting, dude?
Very early on, growing up in Kuwait, my dad was actually the one that got me on the watch bug. He handed me a watch when I was in, I think, 4th grade, and it was an automatic watch. I think it was a Romer, R-O-A-M-E-R. It was the very first ever watch that I've been given. And soon after that, he upgraded me to another watch, which was slightly more valuable and a much better watch, an Omega, and then a Rolex, and then so on and so forth. But I got capped at Rolex.
With your dad?
Correct. It was his watch. It wasn't actually my watch, but he'd be like, yeah, okay, wear it for prom.
Yeah.
Things like that. So to that end, I kind of started getting in the habit of understanding what watches were about. And then actually once I moved to New York and started working for that VC family office, my immediate contact, which was the CEO, had an amazing Patek. To this day, I'm still trying to acquire that one particular Patek. And he started telling me all about the watch world and how he doesn't actually own any of these watches. He's just passing them down to the next generation and how valuable they are and what they mean. I got really interested in this idea of being able to pass down heirlooms to, generations thereon after in my family. So that was kind of the first hook into why I really started appreciating what watches meant, because they'll be there far beyond the time that I'm going to spend on this earth.
Right.
And I hope one day further down the line, it means a lot to one of my relatives or descendants, or and they'd be able to use it as they may. Now, how valuable are these things? They're extremely valuable, especially after the blow up of social media. It's gotten exponentially more valuable.
Yeah.
There's definitely a scarcity premium. And right now, you were telling me that you're interested in getting an Audemars Piguet, which is one of the Holy Trinity, as they're called.
What's the Holy Trinity?
It's Audemars Piguet, in no order. Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, and Vacheron Constantin. And those are the three major watch houses in Geneva.
Where's Rolex?
Rolex is definitely up there, but it's not part of the Holy Trinity. And the reason they're not is because there's a lot that goes around this, but they're tool watches. And generally speaking, they're not finished to the same caliber that the Holy Trinity are. So, if you just flip over a Rolex and try to see what it looks like on the backside, you won't be able to.
I'll look right now while we're talking about
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
There's nothing.
Yeah, it's a steel back. And,
Yeah.
and the reason it's a steel back is because it's a multifaceted reason. Part of it is because it's a tool watch. So the particular watch you're wearing is rated for 300 meters below water. And to do that, they required certain casing that would withstand certain pressures and whatnot and things to that end.
Speaking of that, not to cut you off, but it always seems so funny to me that like they're meant for like diving and all that.
Correct.
Like nobody using it for that.
Correct.
Like it's used maybe like 0.01% of people dive with a Rolex.
Correct. Today you're absolutely right. That's the way it works. But when they were developed as tools, right?
Right.
For the Royal Navy would use Rolexes and that particular watch to be exact to time how long they could stay underwater. So the bezel, the reason why it moves is it's basically telling you better be up by the time that this gets there.
Right.
And that's basically how much oxygen you would have in your tank. And you needed it to be visible underwater. So they created that little date window that looks like a little bubble so that you'd be able to see it clearly. It's very interesting. A lot of these watches were created for a specific purpose and they serve a purpose. But obviously, very few people use it for that purpose.
Yeah, now they're just for show.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
There is a huge watch collector world out there that really appreciates a lot of these watches. But I could only speak for myself, and I can tell you that I don't know how to dive, and I have one of these watches.
Well, from me finally getting into it about a year ago. Okay, so never cared about a watch, never cared about anything. And like last year, as I got into social media, I see all these influencers posting about them. Like I'd seriously never heard of AP.
Yep.
And I still can't even say the name right. Okay. And I see, I'm like, okay, those look cool. In my mind, I just knew about Rolex. I'm like, Rolex is like the top dog.
Yeah.
And then to hear you say, well, no, like this is the Holy Trinity. And then, I see these guys, and I've seen you wear one, a Richard, how do you say it? Richard Mille or Richard Mille?
No knocks to Richard Mille, but I personally don't own a Richard Mille. And I own a Patek. I'm a Patek collector.
Okay.
But yes, it's a Patek Philippe is the watch that I'm currently wearing, and I've never owned a Richard Mille. I'm not there yet.
There we go with me not knowing watches. I thought you did. I thought I saw one, but I guess not.
No.
But anyways, so I see all these guys wearing them and stuff, and then I see them all saying that, hey, they're an asset. In my mind, I'm like, dude, for all these years, I'm like, these guys are idiots, just stunting with these watches. Like, they're not worth what they pay. In my mind, they were like cars where they depreciate after you buy them. And then I looked in and I'm like, wait a minute. This watch is selling more used than it is new, like significantly more.
Correct.
And I started to look in. I'm like, this business makes no sense.
It doesn't. And I can't really tell you that it makes sense to me either. But that's the reality of the market today. There are lots of very highly coveted watches, actually including the one that you're currently wearing, that retails on the open market for a lot more than what you would get it from Rolex or the manufacturer.
Right. And it's funny, I finally made the choice. I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a really nice watch. So this Rolex, my dad gave it to me. And same thing as what you were saying with passing it down as an heirloom. This was one of his watches.
Yeah.
He's always been a jewelry guy. I haven't, but he gave it to me this year for my birthday back in April. And I can tell you, I'll never sell this watch.
Yeah.
Like this is my first, luxury watch ever. It has a lot of sentimental value. I love how it looks. It's just
it's
nice.
an amazing watch.
Yeah, black, stainless, and it's great. But I made the decision. I was like, you know what? Been having a good year. I understand that by buying this, it not only is it gonna be like look great and I'm gonna really appreciate it, but it's also an investment. It should and will go up, I would think. But even if it doesn't, it's still great.
That's fine. Yeah.
Like I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
And I just see things differently now. But long story short, I went to the store because I was like, all right, I'm gonna buy one finally. Like, let's see what they got. So I go to AP here at the Aria. I walk in, and the guy's like, hey, how's it going? I say, hey, how's it going? And I'm looking around. I'm like, where are the watches? He literally did not have one watch. And I go, dude, are the watches in the back? Like, what's the deal? he's like, are you guys afraid you're going to get robbed? Like, what's the deal? He's like, no, we literally don't have a watch.
Yeah.
He's like, there's none. And I go, why are you even here? Like, what are you doing? Like, why is your store even open?
I mean, you're absolutely right. It's crazy, the state of the market. And, with brands like AP, Patek, and VC, they honestly can't keep up with the demand. They have a very high skill requirement for the people that they employ to be able to finish these watches because they're handmade and assembled.
Right.
And there isn't enough
skilled workers who can produce them.
You don't have enough people to do that.
How long does it take to become a watchmaker? It's not like something I can go hire some guy right now and train him. It takes a long time, right?
It does. And then to be able to get to their caliber is a whole other ballpark. Like, you apprentice forever. So to get to the stage where you're actually working on any of these watches that eventually end up on your wrist, say in the next 6 months, you need to work there forever. So sometimes it's actually not worth the investment to even try to bring people in. You just kind of like,
these are who we got.
Yeah, these are the people we got, and we're just going to put new people through the paces, but it's going to be forever before we could produce any more.
Yeah.
And it might not always make sense for companies to try and even go that route because who knows what's going to happen in like 10, 15 years.
Well, the beauty too with these companies is that it's a scarcity driven product, right?
Definitely.
So if they do produce less, theoretically they could just charge more and people will still pay it and their margin probably be even better.
And that's what's been happening.
Yeah.
So so over the last 3 years, so I'll tell you a story of a watch that I personally acquired. So when it was first announced, it was announced for around $170-something thousand. And at the time, I was like, oh my God, this is the most ridiculous price for a watch. But like every watch nerd, I caved and I put in an order. And then I thought I wouldn't see it for a year or two. But having, been with this particular watch group for some time, they reached out to me and they said, hey, we have the watch for you. And between the time that they received the watch and the time that I actually was able to buy it, it was 2 weeks. So while it was in the store for 2 weeks, it went up from being $178,000 to being $198,000. And that was just the new price list for that particular model. Today, that same model from that same provider is somewhere in the $210,000 range. And that's just getting it directly from the manufacturer. So the prices have been steadily going up, and I honestly don't see them stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, because it's just simple supply and demand, like anything. There's just no supply.
Absolutely.
And the demand is like all-time high because everyone's like, oh, I don't want cash. Like, I want to invest in things. There's inflation. What am I going to do to protect myself? And people are buying crazy things.
Yeah. And to that end, speaking about your Rolex, earlier the year during COVID, I made a COVID purchase because I didn't have anything else to do. So I bid on a watch on a Phillips watch auction. It was a Paul Newman Daytona, and I completely underbid. Like I just clicked bid on my phone, and it was the bottom dollar that you could bid on it. Their servers went down, and the only time ever. And when they went back up, it went on to the next slot.
It was already over.
It was already over, and I had won the auction for that particular watch. That watch now retails for around $250,000.
Whoa!
I got it for excess of $200,000 in $200,000 below market value.
So you got it for like $50,000.
Taxes and all included, it was more because it came from Hong Kong. I bid around 80, and by the time it got to the U.S. and you paid taxes and what else, it probably got close to 100. But that being said, the bid price is $250 is probably what I should have gone for. So I would probably pay in excess of $250,000 to get into the U.S.
Yeah.
And to that end, that watch, when it was being produced back in the day, and then this was in the 70s, 60s, was not even $1,000.
It's a $300,000 watch.
Yeah, so whoever ended up with that watch on their wrist probably didn't feel too bad about having that watch passed down to them, or even owning it and making that investment at the time, because I'm pretty sure not a whole lot of things that you invested $1,000 in the 60s would be worth $250,000 today. Right,
and the other thing, I mean, like, look, you look at real estate back then, and obviously it's gone up a ton since then, but for $1,000 to get that 300x return is pretty insane.
It is pretty insane, and not to say that that's universally the case, but it just happens to be that this person lucked out
if you pick the right watch.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. So when I went to AP, I'm just kind of messing with the guy. I'm like, what are you even doing here, dude? Like, you don't have a watch. Yeah. What's the point of being here? And we just started talking. I'm like, well, okay, here's the watch I'm looking at. It's this beautiful Royal Oak offshore. It's blue, black, ceramic, one of their 2020 models. I go, can I just order this? He's like, no. And I already knew kind of going into it because I talked to enough watch people, but I just was like, I just want to see for myself what happens like as a newbie.
Yeah.
And he was like, nah, like, we don't do orders like that. Like, here's how it works, dude. If you want to buy that watch, you got to first start with another watch, like one that no one wants, essentially.
You got to work through the paces.
Yeah, he's like, you got to spend probably like $30,000 to go buy this like gold watch that no one wants, and then maybe we'll let you get that watch.
Yeah. So I did just that. But I happened to actually buy a watch that I really liked. It was Royal Oak, and it was a chrono, and this was back in the day in 2015. Because I wanted to get a ceramic perpetual, similar to the ceramic case that you have on your new watch. And they said, yeah, sure, just, this will make it easier for you to be able to apply for that piece because you have to have been a collector for some time. And I did just that, and I've been calling the AP boutique in New York, hi AP, for the last now 6 years, asking for when I'll get allocated one, and I haven't been.
Wow.
So it's also another thing where it's really they really vet their clients, and they're trying to really find out whether you're invested in the brand or if you're here for a good time and then you're going to flip the watch.
Yeah, and that's what it seemed like. Most of these companies are like, they just want to avoid the flippers.
Absolutely.
They just want the true people that are going to buy.
Absolutely, because it's causing a lot of heat and pressure for them because, hypothetically speaking, if I were to get a watch and you are a collector and I flipped that watch and I got it and you didn't, you'd be very mad that you spent a whole lot of money at that same supplier and you didn't get the watch and I did when I don't even want it.
Right. You don't value it the way I do as a fan.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I ended up walking out and, I was basically like, man, I would rather just buy the watch off market, and pay more than MSRP because that's just what it is, than buy two watches and maybe get it, you know?
Absolutely.
But Rolex was even the same way. I walked into Rolex. They didn't have any watches. Just like no one has watches for sale, like new.
Yeah. Unlike the Holy Trinity, Rolex is actually playing the market. Sorry, Rolex, but I'm just calling it for what it is. Rolex could actually produce a lot more if they wanted to because a lot of their systems are automated. And a lot of their systems, they don't have the same issue of craftsmanship that some of these other smaller brands do. And, in volume, Rolex outsupplies all the three just on its own. But Rolex has realized that they're in creating a scarcity premium. It makes better for all their lines to sell because now you want to get any Rolex and you can't find any of them.
Right.
While, in 2007, when I got my first Rolex, we haggled down the price. I think it was 35% from MSRP. We got
that don't happen no more.
You're going to pay double for it.
Yeah.
And, it's funny enough because I think a lot of these watch brands actually got this from the car industry where, people like Ferrari and Lamborghini were the first ones to devise this kind of scarcity premium and the arbitrage between what it means to be a partner with the brand and what it means to be, just someone that wants to get a car now today and not really invest into the longer vision of where the brand is going.
Right. No, I'm with you, man. You actually were telling me a crazy story about a Patek you just bought that's like got crazy equity.
Yeah. So I put in a application for Patek I'd say now it's been probably 3 to 4 years. As soon as it came out, fell in love with the piece. It's a perpetual calendar, which means that it never loses time, day, date, month, ever, for eternity.
How does it? That's crazy. This Rolex, I feel really dumb now, but I wore it for the first time and then I didn't, and then I'm like, why did it stop? Does it need a new battery or like what's the deal? Like I was like, what is going on with it? I even told my assistant Gabe, I go, hey, can you take this back to Rolex and like
like fix it?
Yeah, I was like, what's going on?
So it's not that it's an automatic movement. What I actually meant is if you keep it wound, right? So if it always has power and you keep it in like in a box that would wind it all the time, it will keep track of which year you're in. So leap year, day, date, month. So February, usually we don't have the same days in the year. Sometimes it's a leap year, sometimes it's not. And you end up having to readjust your watch, right? And that happens every so many years, for it to be particular. And this particular watch will never lose time. So if I keep it in its winding case, or if someone's always wearing it, it will consistently tell you which day, which month, what time it is, and where the moon is in the sky forever.
That's crazy.
So to just be able to do that mechanically, obviously your phone could tell you that, but
we don't care about that.
Yeah, but to be able to do that mechanically is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So that watch was offered to me through the distributor directly, and it was $130,000.
This is a Patek.
Correct. It was a Patek, and I believe that they go on the open market somewhere between $550 to $650.
Insane.
And I feel very fortunate to be able to be offered this particular piece, but at the same time, it's very scary to kind of wear it. So I've only wore it once, and it was around the house. And then it went straight back in the safe in the bank.
Dude, that's crazy. So with that, what's the deal? I mean, what's to stop you from flipping it? It would just ruin your reputation.
It absolutely would. So the idea here is I have no intention of flipping it. It's something that I genuinely enjoy and I'm passionate about. But it definitely does help to feel that, you're applying your hard-earned cash towards a hobby that isn't going to eat away at future generations' wealth. Right. If that makes sense. Like I think about my daughter, I probably wouldn't throw $130,000 at anything today if I didn't think that if she fell on hard times, she'd be able to liquidate that and then make some money on it, and she'd be able to do it easily, right? If I'm not around. So to that end, I definitely think that having a hobby that kind of protects some of the investment that you make in it makes it a lot easier to enjoy that hobby without having a lot of guilt surrounding it.
Right.
And that's why I feel fortunate, is that both I get to enjoy my hobby, and at the same time, I don't feel bad that I'm, destroying my family's future.
Right. No, I mean, it's the best of both worlds, really.
Exactly.
So just to be clear, though, with this watch, you bought it, and you have no intention to sell it, obviously. But if you did, pretty much you wouldn't be able to. You lose that relationship with them.
Absolutely.
And
it's a pretty big deal, because not only would I lose the relationship with them, they would lose the relationship with the manufacturer.
Yeah.
So if I were to hypothetically sell a watch within a 5-year period of acquiring it, then the manufacturer would eventually find out, because it's a very closely knit world. And if for you to sell a piece of that caliber, you probably need to auction it, right?
Right.
So everyone knows the serial number to the watch, who has the watch.
It's easy to tell where it came from.
Exactly. And they only delivered probably 30 in the world.
Yeah.
So it's one of these 30 guys.
It's that pink-haired guy that sold it.
Exactly. It's the pink-haired guy that sold it. So to that end, they know exactly every individual. Right. And they've met them too. So to that end.
Yeah, they make you do like an application to see if you're a fit to wear
exactly. Do you appreciate it or not? Do you understand it or not?
Right.
And I had to interview several times.
By the way, AP, I appreciate it. Just so everyone know, everyone's clear. I appreciate the watch industry and movement. So if anyone wants to give me relationship, I'm in. I won't sell it.
So to that end, I was actually flown out to New York to meet with higher ups and, interview with them, get to know them. We've all spent a really great time together. Amazing people. And so going back to what would happen is not only will I lose the relationship with my direct distributor, the distributor themselves would be flagged for selling to a person that the manufacturer deems as a flipper.
Right.
And then they kind of lose that account, which is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Because they lose that revenue stream.
Right. No, I'm with you, man.
Especially for a commodity that sells like hotcakes.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just crazy to me that these guys just don't go and sell it for $500,000 when they know that that's the true market value.
And a lot of people do, but they hurt a lot of people around them that help them acquire these pieces.
No, I'm saying like the manufacturer themselves.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah, like why is Patek not just selling it for $500,000 when they know it sells for that?
You know what? That's a great question. Patek, reach out to Ryan Pinedo.
Yeah, I want to get Patek's founder or whoever's the head of Patek, and I just got to know the answer.
Harry Stern is the head of Patek.
Okay.
You could, sweet guy, directly reach out to him.
So why is Patek your favorite brand compared to the other two? And why don't you like Richard Mille?
So we could get to Richard Mille at the end of this, but why is Patek my favorite? Patek has a lot of lines of watch kinds, right? So they have their dress watch, and they have almost every other watch complication that is known to man. And not only that, they always are innovating with new complications that could be useful or might not be useful. But to that end, the selection that you can get with Patek is unprecedented with any other watch manufacturer, in my opinion. A lot of brands get stuck on one watch face and type, and AP being one of them. They had Gerald Genta design one watch for them, and it's their bread and butter. It's, the octagonal looking watch, which is kind of similar to the one that you are acquiring. But then once you've had that, you're basically going to keep acquiring watches that are octagonal shaped and kind of do more or less the same thing. Different colors, different sizes. But Patek has a wide range of variety that you can kind of pick through. And also Patek is one of the only watch manufacturers that will continue to service their watch through eternity. So if you got their first watch, they will service it for you today. You can't say the same for Rolex. I do believe that AP would be able to do the same. I don't know to what extent because I don't have that large a rapport with them. I also think that VC would. But Patek definitely finishes their watches to a caliber that is unprecedented to any other watchmaker. And to be very frank, they also hold the best value out of all the watch manufacturers. And if they've done so through millennia. Well, not millennia, but like
a long time.
Years.
Yeah.
So to that end, I just felt most comfortable putting my money where I thought is safest, and I could still enjoy my hobby.
Right. So what's the problem with Richard Mille?
Richard Mille, I think, as a company, is a genius idea. The manufacturer was able to capture a very specific market, and they went after it aggressively, and they nailed it. As a business, I love Richard Mille. As a consumer, though, I don't necessarily think that I have the wealth to fit within the group. And then two, I just think the workmanship is great, phenomenal.
But not worth that kind of money.
But in no way justified for that kind of money.
I got you. It's just like, it's a status thing at this point. It's just like,
exactly.
Oh, dang, like you spent hundreds of thousands at a minimum.
It's a boys club. Yeah. It's a good old boys club.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of good old boys club, that's kind of part of the reason why you got into watches. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, at the time when I moved to LA, obviously at the time I'm an immigrant, moved to a new city, lots of very successful individuals. If you're successful and you've kind of decided that, everything's on autopilot, and money isn't an issue, you probably own a property in LA or California on the coast somewhere. So lots of extremely successful people in my field and in other fields. And it's very hard to network. And I didn't have, a relative or family member, anyone to introduce me to anyone to that matter. And even to join a golf club, it would almost be impossible for me to do so because you have to be referred by someone and get vetted and whatnot.
You also want to be a decent golfer.
Exactly. You have to be a decent golfer.
You have to have some skill.
Exactly. And I've never held a club in my life. So, I have no business doing any of that stuff. But the one thing that I've said that I've consistently been passionate about is watches. And I realized very quickly that it's one of the few ways in which I could meet individuals that are, successful or like-minded. And frankly, I think people like to work with people that they know. You have to be really good at what you do, and no one's gonna throw you a bone just because they like they like the same hobby you do. But knowing people and
it starts a conversation. I mean,
does.
like, look, if you're a watch guy and I see you're wearing a Patek, I'm like, okay, like this guy, for one, it provides some source of credibility. Like he's got some money to be wearing a Patek. And then two, if you bring it up in conversation and then I hear you talk about it the way you talk, I'm like, okay, this guy, he's pretty sophisticated.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And having that kind of commonality, I think, brings people together a lot easier because there is a common interest, right? And it opened up a lot of doors for me, to be honest. I'm not even going to pretend that it hasn't, because it's been one of the main ways in which I've been able to meet a lot of the people that I do business with today, and are right now some of my closest friends. I almost see them every day for work or otherwise. And we've kind of migrated not from only being friends around watches and real estate developments, but now cars and travel and everything else.
And a lot of these guys are your lenders and business partners now. And
exactly.
I'll tell you, for me, I used to just always hate on that type of person. Like, oh man, like if somebody values the Ferraris and the watches and all this stuff, like I don't even want to do business with them anyway. Like, right? I want guys who are like-minded. Like it's the same mindset of you want to work with like-minded people. And so I was like, I want the rich people who don't care about that stuff, and I want to work with them. And to an extent, that was how I got started. But then as I've realized, like, the majority, I don't want to say the majority, but there's a huge segment of these wealthy people who are not like that, right? Yeah. They do value the nice cars and the nice watches and stuff. And like, they will still work with you if you don't have it, but you're going to have to really like prove yourself some type of way, because you're not going to stand out to them immediately unless somebody has told them about you, right? Like,
absolutely.
They're like, oh yeah, I know Ryan. Like I've seen he's legit with what he does. But if I'm going to go try and meet somebody cold off the street at a club or the golf club or whatever it is, their first impression of me is going to be whatever I present myself as, what kind of car I'm driving, and if I'm wearing a watch. And just being a member at the club already kind of gives obviously that credibility. But I mean, I joined the golf club for the same exact reason. Like I want to get around the people that maybe aren't following me, who have no idea who I am, that maybe are part of that good old boys club, and I'm cool with that. Like I just want to be in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting that you've mentioned kind of your perspective on how you used to think about it and what you think about it now, how you think about it now. And in my personal experience, a lot of the people that end up making it really big were the people that were really grinding in school, man. Like for the vast majority of the people that I at least know, they're all really hard workers. You're just seeing them at the tail end of their journey, where they're maybe able to enjoy some of the luxuries that they've worked really hard to get to. Some people don't enjoy doing that, and they invest their money in other ways, and that's absolutely fine. But regardless of which way people decide to express themselves, it doesn't change, in my opinion, that finding a common ground with your business partners is an extremely important asset.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, dude. And I'm a full believer now. I mean, it's part of the reason why I'm now, spending more on these things, like buying the Porsche, buying the AP and stuff, and, even I've got a Louis Vuitton wallet now. I just got my first Louis Vuitton piece, but
Congratulations.
I'm part of the club now. But
Welcome to the club.
never had any of that stuff my entire life until I turned 32 years old. And now too, it's also at the point where it's like I feel like with how much I make and my wealth now, it's not going to cripple me in a way where, dang, now I can't buy this deal or do this investment because I bought that stupid car. Like, it would have did that years ago.
Yeah.
And it just, to me, I couldn't justify it, but now I can. So I'm in a different point in my life too.
Absolutely. And I think exactly like you just said, you've made it to a place where you could enjoy those things. But think about yourself 5 years ago. Probably not would have wanted to do business with yourself today.
No,
just
for sure.
based on those, 3 things that you mentioned.
No, I for sure would have made fun of myself.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I mean, dude, we've been already, like, I could talk about watches all day, but I promised the audience we'd talk a little bit about what you're doing now in business. So, I mean, the watches have led you to being able to do a lot of these cool things you're doing in business. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, between having a passion that was kind of a common ground with a lot of individuals that I currently work with, and the level and caliber of work that we were doing independently on our own, I was kind of able to merge those 2 things together. Where now we're working on 3 properties in the Golden Triangle in Beverly Hills, which is we're working on a property on Camden, we're working on a property on Beverly, and we're working on a property on Rodeo, which are the 3 main streets in the Beverly Hills Golden Triangle. People in my line of work wait their entire life to kind of get to the place where they get offered the opportunity to kind of bid on these projects. It requires a lot of skill, and on top of skill, a lot of connecting.
Look, people hate to know this, but the truth is the hardest worker doesn't always succeed. The most talented guy doesn't always succeed. Majority of business is relationships and the people you meet.
I couldn't agree more with that. There's obviously a certain threshold that you have to be at.
Right.
But beyond that, there are so many more bits of business that you're coaching a lot of your students, including myself, on. And those are the things that really define a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stress that, being part of your group has definitely made me reorient some of my thinking about what I do with some of these deals and how we execute on them. And it's actually opened more doors just by looking at things from your perspective and how we could kind of put out our name and our messaging in different ways.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is for those listening, we met at my workshop and you came to the VIP day, and I mentioned you're like going backwards. You're coming from the top. You come to my workshop, which is about house flipping and wholesaling, and I remember looking at you and I go, "Why would you want to do this?" I was like, "You don't want to flip and wholesale. You're already like doing this high level stuff. Like, let's just tweak your existing business in a way that is just like way more lucrative than anything that, we'd be doing flipping and wholesaling."
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, having spoken to you, and what I was really struggling with at the time was kind of being able to scale. Like, where do I take my business from here now today? With what I do, there's a lot of creativity that goes into the process, and it's very time intensive. While the projects have a lot of accolade to them and they're very high net worth exits, it doesn't change that it takes several years to just go through one cycle for any one of these projects. The payday is great.
Just takes a long time.
It takes a long time, and the systems aren't optimized. It's always like starting a new business. Every project is a new business.
Right.
And the reason why I was really drawn to your business is because you're out golfing. I see you on Instagram. You're out golfing and your business is churning.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy's a genius. I need to learn what he's doing. And that was basically the main drive for why I wanted to join your program. I wanted to understand how is it that you're able to be at the golf course, be with your family, and still churn, revenue the way that you are and start multiple businesses. And what it really came down to was optimizing what you're good at and then hiring for those things that you're not so good at.
Right. Or the things that just take a long time.
Exactly. So you basically run a very lean machine, and I had a lot of fat on my machine.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, and still am, I'm on your call every week. I'm learning something new every week.
Right.
And while it might be from a completely different perspective, it doesn't change. It's still applicable.
The principles are the
Yes,
same.
the principles are the same.
Right.
And actually through being in your workshop, I was able to link up with Eric, and now we're doing developments in Nashville, and the return on investment in the developments in Nashville is also ridiculous. It's honestly been a very eye-opening opportunity to see how different states are doing business and what the returns on those investments are. And this is one of the ways in which I've been able to expand my business in other states that otherwise I would have to build everything from the ground up, which is a lot of time and money, as you know.
Yeah, no, I feel you, dude. And even you and I are working on something big together. I'm not going to say it on the podcast because I think it's a pretty revolutionary idea, but you guys will know about it after we have all the market share. But that's part of the thing too, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're crushing it even before. You get in the program, you're learning a bunch of new things. But the networking, which has been the theme of this entire episode, right? Like, why are you getting in the watch game? I mean, yeah, it's fun, but the networking is where the real value is.
Absolutely.
The coaching, the networking, you're already doing deals with Eric. You and I are about to do something, and that will not be the only deals you do. You're going to end up doing stuff with a bunch of the other people in the group
Absolutely.
too. So I just love seeing it, man, and I think it's for anyone listening to this, if you think that you can do this business as just a one-man band or do it solo and you're going to just stay in your own little box, I mean, I challenge you to get out of your comfort zone and really just get around people. You don't have to join my program. Just get around people and start networking with the right people.
Yeah. One thing that you've said that has resonated very true with me is real estate is a team sport. It absolutely is. I think you've said it multiple times, and now I've said it to everyone I meet, like it's my idea. I remember just I think it was 3 days ago, we're working on a very exciting development on Rodeo, and I mentioned this to one of the investors. Real estate is a team sport, and it just fit the sentence completely because they're an investor out of the Middle East, and there are so many moving parts to making this project successful that he had a lot of angst about being able to execute all of this by himself. I said, "You're not. That's why we're here. You're an LP, and we're gonna do the work." Yeah. So to that end, real estate is a team sport, and what we're going to execute against is everyone's doing their job and everyone knows what they're going to do. And as far as everyone does that, we're going to crush it.
I love it, dude. And completely true. I would not be anywhere where I'm at today without my team. And I'm just trying to grow my team so I can reach new places because that's what it takes, man. So, well, dude, this has been a really fun interview, man. Every time I talk to you, it's like there's always some new idea that I just love hearing, and obviously it's because you're creative. And even though I've influenced you, I'll say you influenced me to dye my hair blue, and maybe I'll go pink one of these days. But I think for now, the next color's red, but it could end up being a very light red that maybe is pink. I don't know.
Honestly, man, meeting you and the group has been definitely life-changing for me. And every time we get on that call, there is something new that I learn. I'm doing something that's you think is slightly different to what you do, but the process and the way, the logic that you go about building a business, especially you have multiple at this point. How many are they? 6?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 6 businesses and still be able to do all those other things where you spend time with your family and spend time to golf and enjoy life. It's all about the way that you think about these and how you position the right individuals for it. And, having that is extremely valuable. You've been life-changing.
Appreciate you, bro. So for anyone listening who wants to maybe join your watch crew or do some development with you or just network with you, man, where can they find you?
So my personal Instagram handler is last_citizen. And then our website is samaha.com, which is my last name.com.
Spell it.
SAMAHA.com.
Okay.
Kind of like Yamaha, but with an S.
Samaha.
Exactly. And that's my family name. And you'll be able to see all the kind of work and cool things that we do on there.
Cool. So, guys, make sure you check him out. Make sure you give him a follow. Doing some amazing things in LA, and it's going to be exciting to see all the other things you accomplish. So, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Peace.
Have a good one.
Thanks for watching The Ryan Pineda Show. If you want to work with me, head over to ryanpineda.com. You can find my courses, coaching programs, and upcoming events. We also have free resources you can download, so head over to ryanpineda.com.